Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary and General King, let me begin by thanking the men and women of the United States military for their service and their bravery. I recognize that our service members have performed with extraordinary courage and tactical skill, and they've done incredible things that our country has asked them to. Their professionalism and selfless service are not in question and never have been. What is in question is the purposes and the strategic direction of this war. Mr. Hegseth, as Secretary of the Department of Defense, you are ultimately responsible for the conduct of the Iran war. Any unvarnished review of what is happening right now in the Middle East would reveal a geopolitical calamity, a strategic blunder resulting in worldwide economic crisis. The result of Trump's war of choice is a serious, self-inflicted wound to America. It will take years and a new administration to recover from the grave damage to our standing in the world, as well as our economy and our military. We must remember that 13 Americans have been killed in action, hundreds wounded, and thousands of civilians killed, including more than 100 school children. The risk of this conflict was foreseeable. I'm certain that the Department of Defense knew that it was likely that in a war with Iran, Iran would create an international economic crisis by blocking the Strait of Hormuz and thus stopping 20% of the world's oil. Was this existential threat considered? Apparently not. During the 60 days of Trump's Iran war, critical munitions have been expended at an alarming rate, depleting magazine levels below what is thought necessary to hold China at bay. It will take years and tens of billions of dollars to restock. A significant part of the necessary Navy and Marine force in the Pacific has been removed and sent to support the Iran war. Our support of Ukraine has suffered as supplies and defense systems are diverted to the Iran war. America has lost irreplaceable aircraft, radar systems, and strategic bases have been shown to be vulnerable. The continued lengthy deployment of ships, equipment, and personnel has sacrificed readiness. We know what we have lost, but what have we gained? Let's consider that the regime in Tehran is still intact, with new and more radical leadership, as are Iran's ballistic missile and drone forces, as is Iran's ability to rebuild their military industries. Also, as is Iran's coordination with China, Russia, and North Korea, and Iran's ability to choke off global energy supplies, and their stockpile of highly enriched uranium, which they only built after President Trump shredded President Obama's Iran deal in 2017. Secretary Hegseth, you have been lying to the American public about this war from day one, and so has the President. You have misled the public about why we are at war. You and the President have offered ever-changing reasons for this war. You've misled the public about the progress of the war. While the military has executed this war with tactical success, the strategy has been an astounding incompetence, doing immense economic damage to America.
Mr. Chairman,
and the
Mr.
world.
Chairman, with the personal attack on the Secretary, he should have an opportunity to respond.
He certainly
Thank
will
you.
when
No,
I...
no,
No, at the time
I
you're
am
doing
finished.
it.
it's the gentleman's time. He can use it as he sees fit and add an extra 5 seconds to Mr. Garamendi's time.
Thank you. You and the President are ever-changing reasons for the war. You have misled the public about the progress of the war. While the military has executed this war with tactical success, the strategy has been an outstanding example of incompetence. This war of choice is a political and economic disaster at every level. Despite the President's promise to lower the cost of living, gas prices are up 40% and inflation is soaring, so much for lowering the cost of living. The President has got himself and America stuck in the quagmire of another war in the Middle East. He's desperately trying to extricate himself from his own mistakes. it is in America's and indeed the world's interest that he succeed in that. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes. Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you and I agree that Iran is a national security threat to us and our allies. Now, earlier you called us feckless for questioning your war. Do you think Congress was smart or feckless when it failed to ask tough questions of the Bush administration and gave them a blank check for Iraq?
Well, if you're trying to compare this war to the Iraq
I'm just asking
war,
if you
which
think
the
it was
president
smart or
was the first
feckless.
one to call a stupid war, then it's a false comparison.
Okay, well, probably a good idea to ask tough questions. So let me just ask you a few questions. Did you advise the president that we should attack Iran?
We were, first of all, in this position in the cabinet, we never talk about what we would advise the president to do or
Well,
not.
do you think the
But
president or
I've been
you
in
deserves more?
I've been in every meeting.
I understand
with
that,
the
Mr.
chairman and
Secretary.
everybody else as those
Secretary,
critical
I'm asking
decisions
the
were
questions.
made, and he got every perspective possible when it came.
I'm
to
just
making
asking what your perspective is. Are you afraid to take ownership of this? Do you
Well,
think it was a good idea or not?
As I've consulted the president, do I think it's a good idea to confront a nuclear bomb
To start this
in the
war.
hands of the? Imagine what the world would look like right now if Iran had a nuclear weapon.
Okay, so let's
Just imagine.
which, by the way,
if
every
they
other,
had one,
every
which the
previous
Obama deal was
administration,
going to allow them
including
to
the first Trump administration,
they had one.
prevented them from having a nuclear weapon. So, listen, how is this war going? Do you think we're winning?
do. Militarily on the battlefield, it's been an astounding military success.
No, but are we winning the war?
Absolutely.
Okay, so do you call Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz winning?
Well, I would say the blockade that we hold that doesn't allow anything to come in or out of Iranian ports, which
Okay,
is
so
always in our
we've blockaded
portfolio
their
to
blockade. So
use.
they blockaded us, and then we blockaded their blockade. That's like saying, tag, you're it. Or, you know, if President Madison had said, well, the British just burned down Washington, but don't worry, we're going to burn it down as well. Chairman Kaine, did the military have plans for the idea that Iran might blockade the strait?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I'll answer it this way. You know, in this job, I have to maintain trust with a variety of constituents. To
Okay, I'm
include
just
the president.
asking if the military
Yes,
had
sir.
plans.
As always, my point in this is, as I explain the role, my point in this is we always offer a full range of military options that are carefully considered, with the associated risks with those options and the considerations therein.
So,
and we
Mr.
always do
Secretary,
that.
did you consider this risk?
Of course, this department has looked at all aspects of this risk. And
So then
because
why did you
this
send the
department looks,
minesweepers, the only minesweepers we had in the Gulf, to Singapore weeks before the war started?
we have lots of capabilities that you may or may not be aware of at the classified level.
Okay, and
to deal
so,
with, to deal with
by the way, would
mines.
the
And
Trump-class battleships have helped with this?
You're talking about a
Minesweeping.
prospective future battleship, which we welcome in the fleet.
Okay, so you're supportive of the battleships.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much has Iran profited from your administration lifting the sanctions on Iran when you started this war?
I can tell you Iran is financially devastated right now.
Okay, well,
in conjunction with the
they've
Treasury
earned about
and
$14 billion.
Operation Economic Fury. They're at a point where between the blockade and what we've done to them militarily, remember, they don't have a Navy. They can't contest the blockade.
Okay.
Between what we've done to them
What kind of
militarily
a
and
Navy can they
financially,
buy
they're at
for
a place
$14 billion?
where they have very few options.
How many Chinese missiles can they buy for $14 billion? Does that sound like winning?
They're not. We're ensuring, and they're not buying Chinese missiles.
Okay. You know, at the end of the day, this also has a cost to us. If let's say this war costs $100 billion, I mean, you've already said, give us more time. It's only been 2 months. It could go on for 20 years like Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's just say it costs $100 billion. What is that to the average American taxpayer? Do you have any idea?
Well, unlike foolish previous administrations, it won't go on
No, I'm just asking.
for years and decades.
But let's just say
Sitting in
it's
this
$100 billion.
position, it's hard to imagine how
You know
it was
that?
allowed those things to happen. You were a part
You
of
know
that
the
war.
answer to that?
So was I. And I never. knew
I'm
what
just
the end
asking if
state
you know
clearly
what your
was.
war
Now I
costs
know
the
what the
average
end state
American
is.
taxpayer.
What is the cost of Iran having a nuclear weapon that they wield?
I'm just
over us?
asking if you know the cost of the average American
I'm asking
taxpayer.
you what the
It's about
cost would be of
$600.
that.
So for the American taxpayers out there, my constituents, some of the constituents you wanted to represent in Minnesota, I'm just wondering if they have an extra $600 lying around to pay for your war. I think that's just a question that we ought to ask. Now, quickly, on March 13th in a press conference, you said we will give them no quarter, no mercy. In order for no quarter or no survivors is a war crime under the Geneva Conventions. You understand that's murder. Do you stand by that statement?
The Department of War fights to win, and we ensure that our warfighters have the rules of engagement necessary to be as effective
Okay, so
as
just to be
humanly
clear,
possible,
you
which
called
they are.
Democratic members of Congress to be tried for sedition for reminding our troops to follow the law. But when you tell them to commit a war crime, you stand by yourself.
For insinuating that the laws that
Mr.
we're giving them are
Gentleman's
unlawful.
time's expired.
breakdown.
Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, General Kane, Mr. Hegseth, and hers for being here today. I associate myself with the comments of Ranking Member Smith and Mr. Garamendi, so that I won't repeat a lot of what has been said. Mr. Hegseth, I recently realized that we have something in common. I'm also a fan of Pulp Fiction. And no, the movie is not an accurate portrayal of the Bible. You know what I'm talking about. This president and his administration have claimed to be the most transparent of all time. With that in mind, I'd love to get some straightforward answers today. Some estimates show that the Trump administration's war of choice in Iran is costing taxpayers around $1 billion every day. In addition to spending taxpayer money on a war they don't want, it is also driving up costs. The cost of gas, while the cost of living is skyrocketing under this administration's policies. To me, and I assume to the American people, it is unclear why we started this war, how it will end, and what anyone gained from it. Mr. Hegseth, about how much money has been spent on this war to date, and how much more do you anticipate spending?
Well, as our comptroller laid out, the estimate is less than $25 billion at this point as far as an expenditure. And the question I would ask this committee is, what is it worth to ensure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, considering the radical ambitions of that regime? I mean, almost every member of this dais at some point has said, whether it was 2015,
thank you for your answer. I'll proceed to
Iran
my
can
next
never have a
question.
nuclear weapon.
Thank you for your answer.
President Trump is the one that's willing to make sure it doesn't happen.
Supposedly, we had taken care of the nuclear capability last time around. And now this war, we're at it again, because obviously we said we did, but we didn't.
In a way that
We know,
the United States military can do.
I want to reclaim
Yes.
my time. We know that the cost of oil and gas has gone up as a direct result of this war, and the American people are feeling that pain at the pump. In an attempt to alleviate the high price of gas caused directly by this president, he lifted sanctions on Russian oil. The way I see it, this is a massive gift to Putin and Russia's struggling economy. Mr. Hegseth, is there any concern that easing sanctions against Russia will allow Putin to continue funding Russia's illegal war against Ukraine?
Well, we've seen Russia's and Putin's inability to make effective battlefield gains, just like their inability to defend the Maduro regime with the billions of dollars of systems the Russians sent to Venezuela in order to defend him, which were defeated in 15 minutes. So Russia's military capabilities are no match for ours.
And you don't believe easing the
ensuring,
sanctions is helping Russia?
well, we have the best energy team in the planet at
It's just a yes or
White
no.
House, and we're going to ensure that
this is not deja vu. It's a simple yes or
you
no.
understand the energy dominance that this administration has unleashed.
All right, well,
through
I'll
our
proceed
all
to
of
my
the
next
above
question.
strategy.
Last week, it was announced that the Department of Defense is no longer requiring service members to get their annual flu shot. Now, this is an easy one for you. It's a softball. Don't screw it up. The rationale was to, and I quote, restore freedom to our joint force. This has been a requirement since 1950 because it is an effective at preventing the spread of flu among our troops. It's not some new woke requirement, as you like to lean on for much of your rhetoric. This decision is actively making our military less safe and less prepared. Mr. Hegseth, at this time are there plans to remove the mandatory requirement of other vaccinations like measles, mumps, and polio?
We made very clear in our announcement that it applies to service members having a choice as it pertains to the flu vaccine.
Don't you think that's a little reckless?
No, I think allowing well-informed Americans who serve our country to make a choice is not reckless. And commanders will still have latitude, say, for a submarine or something else to make a decision for a unit about whether it could be mandatory in a particular circumstance. But overall, our troops have earned the right to be able to choose about something like that related to their health.
Mr. Hegseth, I stand by what I said last time you were here. You were incompetent then, you're incompetent now, and you're the gift that keeps on giving when it comes to incompetence. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now
Other than that, I'm
recognizes
doing
the
great.
gentleman
Thank
from
you.
Mississippi. As a gentleman from California, Mr. Khanna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, tomorrow is 2 months since the war has begun. You've testified that it was $25 billion in cost in terms of the munitions we used and what we paid for it. But when you add to that the damage that was done to our bases and today's dollars for buying replacement munitions and replacement aircrafts, what has the total cost been over the last 60 days?
That number right now reflects the total cost that we're seeing.
Including buying in today's dollars the new weapons and replacements, and including the damage there? That's your testimony?
If there's
under oath?
adjustments to that, I would defer to the comptroller on that.
And how much are you seeing in terms of, are you asking in terms of supplemental funding just for the Iran mission from this committee?
If and when a supplemental is submitted,
Yeah, how much?
the majority of it would not just be for, would not be
But
for
what
Epic
would be the
Fury, it would be
ballpark for Iran?
munitions related to the entirety
Just
of
a
what
number,
we want to
sir.
get done.
A number, what would you submit? What are
It
you
would be
requesting?
within the, on Iran, it would be less than $25 billion, but there's a lot more we would ask for beyond
Well,
just Iran.
you're saying it's
considering-
25 billion. Okay, I would just, if you
Okay.
come back, you want to revise those numbers, because all the experts are disagreeing with you when it comes to today's dollars and damage, but you can revise it. How much did it cost American taxpayers in terms of the strike to the Iranian school where kids were killed? Do you have that number? In terms of the missiles we used?
As I've said, that unfortunate situation remains under investigation.
You don't know how much it
15-6
costs the
investigation, but I
taxpayer?
wouldn't tie a cost to that, to anything.
It's a reasonable question, no, sir? I mean, our taxpayer money was going there. Do you know how much it will cost Americans in terms of their increased cost in gas and food over the next year because of the Iran war?
I would simply ask you what the cost is of an Iranian nuclear
I'm
bomb.
going to give you that
I would
opportunity.
simply ask you what the,
Yeah,
you're
but
playing gotcha
sir,
questions
sir,
about
no, it's
domestic
not.
things. I'm not.
You're saying it's a gotcha question to ask what it's going to be in terms of the increased
Why
cost
won't
of
you
gas
answer what
and
it
food?
costs to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear
I
bomb?
give you that, sir. But let me.
What
if you
would
could
it
just
cost?
ask my
What would you pay to ensure Iran doesn't
But
get a nuclear
can you-
bomb?
Do you,
What would
sir,
you pay?
I reclaim my time. Do you not know? You had no one do the analysis of what the increased cost of gas and food on the American people are going to be?
What is the cost
Let
of
me-
Iran
let me give
holding
you the
that
number.
straight at
Let me
issue
give
with
you the
nuclear
number.
weapons?
It's $631 billion, which means it's an increase of $5,000 a year for American households. Now, let me give you this point. You're saying that your operation is preventing a nuclear Iran. Will you acknowledge that there is an economic cost to the American people for doing what you believe is necessary to make Iran denuclear? Will you acknowledge the economic cost?
We have an incredible economic team that's managing this better than
Yeah, but
what the previous
but to
administration did to our
acknowledge that-
economy,
to acknowledge
what the
there's a
previous
cost.
administration
You-
did
you
with
don't
inflation,
even know what the, you know
what
what's
the previous
upsetting. I reclaim
administration
my
did with
time. You know,
COVID,
Secretary,
and you're going to
Secretary,
lecture this
I reclaim
administration
my
about
time,
the
sir.
economy?
You know what is upsetting to me?
Incredible.
You didn't even do the analysis on how much it's costing the American people. It's one thing if you said, okay, it costs the American people $5,000, but we think it's worth it. That's what we've done in World War II and other wars. Here's what it costs. You got to pay for it. You don't even know what the average American is paying. You don't know what we paid in terms of the missiles that hit the Iranian school. You don't know what we're paying in terms of gas. You don't know what we're paying in terms of food. Your 25 billion number is totally off. It's the incompetence. It's the incompetence. Let me ask you this. Certainly, maybe here we'll find agreement. There were still 440 pounds of low-enriched uranium, correct, when President Obama, after the JCPOA? Is that accurate?
The amounts and types are classified.
Okay. Will you acknowledge that there were 970 pounds of uranium enriched after Trump tore up the JCPOA?
The JCPOA was a terrible deal that allowed Iran a path to a nuclear bomb.
You deal with vague platitudes. I'm asking you about numbers. Like, you don't know what gas costs, you don't know what food costs, you don't know what the operation costs. You know, I get sound bites, but how about numbers? Do you know how much the enriched uranium was after you ripped up the JCPOA? Trump did.
I'll give you a number. I know that, as was stated by early on, the price of gas is twice as expensive in California, your home state, as anywhere else in the country because of the horrible policies your state pursued.
You know what? It used to be that that type of stuff worked, And then you started to lose the people that you campaigned you wanted to be for, because you said you wouldn't get us into bad wars. You said you would bring down the prices. You know what I'm sad for? I'm sad for all the people who voted for Trump. I'm sad for them because you betrayed them. You betrayed a lot of that MAGA base. And you know who knows that? J.D. Vance knows that.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon. Mr. Crow.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I want to go in a little bit different direction. Timothy Parlatore served as your private attorney, correct?
Correct.
And Mr. Parlatore also served as private attorney for President Trump's campaign, correct?
I'm not privy to every professional position that he's held.
Well, I'll help you out. He did. And you appointed Mr. Parlatore as your senior advisor, correct?
He does reserve duty on behalf of the Navy.
His title is senior as an advisor. You gave him that title, correct?
And I would count him as very much an advisor of mine.
Yep, he travels with you, correct?
Tim Parlatore has been a long-term friend. He's a great patriot.
He travels
has
with you. That's not what I asked. I reclaim my time. He travels with you, doesn't he? He travels with you, doesn't he? Correct? There's public Instagram that shows this. Just say yes.
Yes, of course.
Okay. He sits in meetings with you and advises you, doesn't he?
He sits in some meetings on occasion.
Yeah, well, he maintains a desk in an office in the Pentagon, does he not?
I'd have to check.
You don't know?
It's a big Pentagon.
You directly commissioned Mr. Parlatore in the Naval Reserve as a Navy commander in March 2025, did you not?
I was very proud to do so.
And when you did, because he's a Navy Reserve officer, he didn't have to go through the PPO process, the White House Presidential Personnel Office, right? He wasn't vetted by White House PPO.
Uniformed service members don't get vetted by
The answer is yes. He didn't have to be vetted by White House PPO. He didn't go through the Senate confirmation process either, did he? The answer is no.
I don't know what you're getting to, but Tim is a fantastic
I'll tell you what I'm getting to. The answer is no, right?
He does great work.
Okay. He didn't maintain a security clearance when you appointed him as special advisor. Is that right?
I'd have to check.
You don't know?
I mean, anybody that has access to sensitive material is going to have the appropriate clearance.
Okay, so when you appointed him as special advisor, he had a security clearance?
You're trying to piece together a timeline.
No, I'm asking a simple question. One of your special, most sensitive advisors, did he have a security clearance?
No, you're playing a gotcha game like you do on TV and everywhere else. You're trying to thread together details that are connected about something else.
Clearly, you're concerned about my line of questioning, aren't you, Mr. Secretary? Because you know where it's going, don't you? I think you do. So, does Mr. Parlatore represent foreign governments? He has a private law practice, does he not?
From what I understand of his law practice, he does a lot of great work for service members in the military and other.
He maintains a private law practice. Does he represent foreign governments or foreign persons in that private law practice?
I don't know.
You don't know. Somebody who's sitting in your meetings, a special advisor, you don't know. Does he represent any senior officers who are currently under consideration for promotion by you or your office?
The only person that makes determinations about senior officers is me.
Answer the question. Does he represent senior officers who are under consideration for promotion by you?
No, I'm the one that makes decisions about choosing.
Does he represent them, Mr. Secretary? Does he represent them?
He doesn't represent anyone. He's a legal advisor and always has been.
But he has clients, does he not?
He's a legal advisor to me on reserve duty, and he always has been, and he does a fantastic job.
Is it true that Mr. Parlatore was removed? I reclaim my time. Is it true that Mr. Parlatore was removed from an investigation by the White House last year?
I don't know what you're referring to, but not that I'm aware of.
You're not aware of it. Was it true that you were also removed from that same investigation? The answer is yes.
No, not that I'm aware of.
You're not aware of it. That's interesting. Well, is it true that Mr. Parlatore disparaged President Trump?
I don't know what you're referring to, but no.
Is it true that Mr. Parlatore was accused by President Trump and his lawyers of lying?
What you're accused of is a cute line of questioning that's going nowhere.
Well, it's going somewhere, which is why you're not answering the question. Was it true that he was accused of lying by the president's legal team?
I'm not familiar to, you'd have to give me the context.
Well, it's
of
right
that
here.
article
You want to look at
and
the statement from President
Anybody
Trump's
could blow
legal
up
team?
a quote and claim it says something, and that's what you're doing in a little stunt.
Secretary Hegseth, what I'm really concerned about is you purport to have unfaltering loyalty to President Trump, and yet you are continuously
Oh,
going
you care a lot
I
about
reclaim my
President Trump,
time.
don't you?
You
This
are going
is a
behind
cute
his
waste
back
of your 5
and
minutes.
appointing
A
people.
huge,
I reclaim
cute
my time.
waste of your 5 minutes that
I
led
reclaim
nowhere.
my time. You are
Do not
repeatedly
pass go,
going
do not
behind the
collect
president's
Gentleman
back.
from Colorado's
Failed.
time. Go ahead, Mr. Crow.
You are repeatedly going behind President Trump's back, appointing people who he has accused of lying, who the White House is
Gentleman's
accused of
time's
lying.
expired. The
And you
chair
are
now
not being
recognizes
honest
the
with
gentlelady
President
from
Trump.
South Carolina, Ms. Mace. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. DeLuzio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We all just heard pretty powerful reporting, courtesy of Mr. Ryan, from many of our wounded troops who were injured in the attack in Kuwait. Mr. Secretary, you heard direct quotes from some of them via CBS's reporting. They were willing to talk to the press. Things like they were unprepared to provide any defense for themselves in the unit. Things like we were moved closer to Iran, to a deeply unsafe area that was a known target. Your spokesperson, Sean Parnell, in response to that reporting, said it was not true. Do you agree with that? He was calling these guys liars?
I'm not calling our troops liars, and I don't know if what you're representing is correct or not. I'll take you at your word on that. But all I know is that we took every effort possible at the commencement of this campaign to ensure the defense of our troops, to include moving them off of known bases to places that were not known, and we had intel.
Understood,
intel
Secretary,
were not known, and then those were fortified with bunkers and other fortifications with theater air defenses. Was our concern that something could
I'm going
leak
to pause you
through?
there. I'm going to give you a chance.
Absolutely. But
Secretary,
no,
I'm going to
you're
give you a chance.
disparaging me that I don't care.
I'm
about
asking
the
you whether you
passing
think
of-
they're
No,
liars or not.
You
That's what I
and
asked
you
you.
are disparaging me that I don't care about the passing of our troops.
Nope.
That
I asked
think
if you
our
thought
troops
they're
are-
liars, Secretary.
That's disparaging and
reclaim my
smearing
time.
in every way. Nobody cares more about
Gentlemen,
the fate of our troops. Nobody cares
Mr.
about the
Mr.
health of our troops.
Mr.
Nobody
Secretary,
wants to bring them all hope
Mr.
more than I do.
Secretary,
What
I
they're
understand,
doing
but
is
he
insinuating
controls the
we don't care.
time. He controls the time. You get to control your answer. And the gentleman's recognized.
If we're allowed to answer.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Secretary, my question was clear, whether you thought they were liars or not. You don't seem to want to answer it. We can move on. The other part of what your spokesman said, and you just reiterated here, was that, and I'm quoting your spokesman, every possible measure has been taken to safeguard our troops, end quote. You mean to tell us, and I'll give you a chance to clarify, there is not a single additional thing you could have done to protect those troops who are now wounded, 6 of whom are dead?
I'm telling you that as a department, we did every conceivable thing at my level and every echelon down to ensure the maximum force protection for our troops. We live in a dangerous world, in a dangerous place against a determined enemy that can't have a nuclear weapon, and that requires sacrifice and risk. And it tragically, in this case, it meant 6 Americans lost their lives and others were wounded. And we all know that, and that's part of the cost. But it does not mean we didn't care, and it doesn't mean we didn't
I
commit.
didn't ask you that,
It doesn't mean we
Secretary, and I'm
didn't
not
do
saying that.
everything possible, which we did.
But let's be clear about what was done. There were T-walls there, essentially. There was no overhead protection. The known threat in that environment, and I think we all here understand it, is overhead drone strike. There was no protection for overhead drone strike. So I'm struggling to understand how your answer and your spokesman's answer is that every possible measure was taken. We can move on. Mr. Chairman, and Chairman Kane, I want to ask you something on a different topic. Folks at home know you're the senior military officer in our armed services. They may not have as much of understanding of your role in the chain of command. You're outside the operational chain of command, but you are the President's and the Secretary's senior military advisor. So I want to ask a very basic thing, what you would expect our commanders in the field, our troops to do should the enemy lay down their weapons and try to surrender. What would you expect commanders in the field to do?
Well, sir, I think I'll go back to something I said earlier with deep respect for your question, but I think you're trying to take me to a partisan place here, and I can't let you do that.
General, as always, I respect your
No, sir,
desire
I
to
just,
avoid it. I'm not
yes,
trying to
sir.
put you in a partisan
No,
place.
and I know that, but our officers and enlisted service members always follow lawful orders. There's a checklist for them to do that, and I'll stay in the
Very
middle.
good. Understood, General. Secretary, let me give you a chance. And you've been asked about this earlier. You said in, I think, your press conference, essentially, and I'll quote you here, no quarter, no mercy for our enemies. That's the end of the quote. Is your guidance that you expect our troops in harm's way, if there's a foreign enemy surrendering, laying down their arms. They're supposed to provide no quarter and kill them?
You denied it, but you were indeed trying to take the chairman to a partisan place. That was General Milley. That was the previous administration, which played politics. We don't play that way.
It's a simple question. I'm asking you what you meant.
We fight to win, and we ensure the rules of engagements are such that our troops have every authority possible to.
I'll give you another chance. In saying that, are you trying to tell commanders that that's what you expect? You're in the chain of command. It's a simple question.
I understand that. My commanders know exactly what the guidance is with each and every mission, and they know every tool,
Secretary,
every tool at
in
their disposal
refusing
to be
to answer
effective.
it, I think you speak volumes. I think that's a dangerous thing. We all know the expectations. We know the law of war. We know what is lawful. I'd expect our commanders to understand that as well. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, now
Recognizes Mr. Vindman from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Earlier, Secretary Hegseth, you talked about flexible realism. So let's see if we can figure out how much of it is realistic and how much of it is just flexible. Secretary Hegseth, last year I asked you some questions about Indo-PACOM and threats in Europe, and you had a hard time answering those questions. I'm sure you prepped better this year, and I'm hoping you can answer some of these basic questions since now we are at war. Do you know what the price of oil is today?
I don't know where it's gone as of this time of this hearing, but roughly $100 a barrel.
It's actually closer to 120, 117.
Well, it depends on the index you're looking at.
I'm looking at Brent. Do you know what the price was the day before of Brent, the day before we went to war?
It was certainly lower. You understand you're taking some economic risk. But I would note
a lot lower.
The energy
Thank you for
dominance
answering
this
my
president
question.
has unleashed has put us in an
get to
incredible
my question.
position.
Thank you. So it's $72, and so now we have a 62% increase. By the way, the department obviously will be paying those extra fuel costs. That's going to be not insignificant, but so will the American people. Now, at its narrowest point, how wide is the Strait of Hormuz?
I think it's about 12 miles, but I'd have to check.
It's 24 miles, but 12 miles is actually the relevant number because that's the navigable channel.
That's
So
the international water navigable channel
Yep.
point.
And do you know how many barrels of oil transited the Strait of Hormuz each day before the war started?
I don't know the exact number, but you're looking at over 100 oil tankers usually transited a day, or 120 a day would transport the strait.
Yeah, and so 20 million barrels a day, and right now they're at an 81% reduction. So it sounds like you've done your homework. You're tracking pretty well what the strategic situation is. So a couple of questions. Were you aware that if we struck Iran, that they would most likely close the Strait of Hormuz?
Of course, our department was prepared and planning for every possible contingency, being front and center as something they may do in a desperate state to attempt to
which is what they've
facilitate
done,
some kind of control.
and I appreciate that. And earlier you told Mr. Moulton that this department has looked at all aspects of the risk, and that the president got every possible perspective. And then recently you just said that the president did understand the risks and had the courage to undertake the endeavor nonetheless, and that's leadership, or words to that effect, pretty close. And so I just want to kind of give you the state of play right now. It's been 2 months of war. We have hopes for a resolution, but the war continues, really. Iran has closed the strait, and we've now gone in and blockaded their ports. 1/5 of the world's oil is unable to transit the strait, and the American people and the department are paying significantly more. And you also said that this is what the American people actually voted for. But actually, the American people voted for a promise not to get into Middle Eastern wars. And they voted for lower prices. And this is the exact opposite of what they got. So let me ask you this. The president ordered the strike, is that correct?
The president's been saying for over 30 years that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. So he's been
got
very
it.
clear as a
We're
position
talking
when
about
their American people voted for President Trump overwhelmingly. They voted
Secretary,
for that
I got
position.
that. But the president ordered the strike, is that correct?
Which strike are you referring to?
The strike on Iran, the war that we're in.
Oh, of course. I mean,
Okay.
he's the commander-in-chief.
So
He's
it
made
sounds like
the calls.
It sounds like you're blaming Daddy for the mess we're in, and I don't think he's going to be particularly happy with you.
I see what you're trying to do. There's no daylight in this administration on this
Mr. Secretary, I'm
campaign,
asking
and
the
I'm happy
questions. You've been
to
admonished
stand
for this
shoulder to shoulder
before.
with this
You're
administration.
claiming my time. So let's shift gears. Last time we were here, I asked you if you'd apologize to the mother of an F-18 pilot whose son you endangered for sharing classified information on a signal chat. You refused. On March 1st, 6 Army soldiers, including a constituent of mine, were killed by an Iranian drone strike. Do you take any responsibility for those deaths?
I was there at Dover when they came back. Of course, I take
So was I.
responsibility for every aspect
Well,
of
I
this
appreciate
mission.
that, because you also complained about the fact that tragic things happen. The news makes it front-page news. The press only wants to make the president look bad. Is it about the soldiers, or is it about the president looking bad?
It's not just the president who wants, or the media that wants to make him look bad. It's you.
It's actually about the soldiers, and it's frankly reprehensible that you would make that statement. And so, you know, Truman had a sign on his desk that said the buck stops here. And this
The gentleman's time has expired. The
about
chair now
passing the buck.
recognizes Mr. Van.
Goes back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, I don't trust your judgment. You made the comment to my colleague that there's no daylight between you and the president, which calls into question your role and, again, accountability. And so I got to ask, has there ever been any time that you disagree with the president on this war or anything in general?
I would never betray conversations that we've had.
Okay,
The
so
commander-in-chief
you can't even
deserves
acknowledge
candid
that
discussion
you've
in
ever even
private.
disagreed with the man, like his choice of tie, that dance, anything. You haven't disagreed on anything.
I've never relayed the discussions I have with the commander-in-chief.
Okay, because it seems to me that rather than being Trump's Secretary of Defense, that sounds like you're just being Trump's secretary. And we need someone who's going to be there that is actually advising, that is also pushing back when necessary and serving the country as opposed to the president. So you said you've never called him out privately or publicly, because we know that hasn't done. But have you ever said the words, and you don't have to tell me what it was about, have you ever said the words, Mr. President, I disagree with you?
As I said, I don't relay the private conversations that a commander-in-chief
You can't even acknowledge
deserves.
that, like if you've just said, Mr. President, you're wrong about this, or you're wrong about that. You can't even acknowledge, you can't even admit that, if that's happened.
You can ask it again if you want, but I don't relay the private
Okay, fair
conversations
enough.
that a commander-in-chief
The
deserves.
objectives of this war have constantly shifted and changed. You see that, though, right? Like, you can acknowledge that. Because 1 minute it was to dismantle the Iranian nuclear program. But I don't know how that objective has not now been the listed objectives as far as I understand. Then there was regime change. Trump even said when announcing the start of the war, the hour of your freedom is at hand. It's yours to take. He also posted on Truth Social in January, help is on the way, to the Iranians posting in the street. Do you still believe in this particular objective?
The objectives have been clear from the beginning, and I've supported the president throughout in having the courage to take on this threat.
Okay, so then let's talk about what else has he said? So let's talk about the Trump doctrine. So on November 6th, the president said he was all about ending wars, not starting new ones. Yet in the so-called doctrine, the conflict has not answered why we're in the war. The objectives have changed. We're not sure about the exit strategy. This, to me, is the definition of open-ended or forever war. And you cannot claim to end forever wars while engaging in one. And then here's the one that really gets me. So I'll know when it's over when I feel it in my bones. So, Mr. Secretary, war decisions should be based on defined military objectives. You agree with that statement, correct?
It's the commander-in-chief makes the call on behalf of the American people when our objectives are completed.
There should be clearly defined military objectives. That's safe to say?
Ultimately, the commander-in-chief makes the decision about when our objectives are achieved.
Okay, because I'm just trying to figure out, like, what kind of analysis, evaluation are we looking at with objectives when it's just what the president feels in his bones? Like, are we talking about like some Da Vinci Petruvian man or what? Like, what are we talking about when we just talk about feeling it in your bones? Because my thing is, we're not set up here to trust anyone's judgment. We're here to represent our districts and the American people. And so my next question is, the problem that I'm concerned with is that Iran continues to increase their negotiating leverage with us. And so we've been told that we've won this war. It'll be over in a few days. But now they didn't control the Strait of Hormuz, and now they do have leverage in the Strait of Hormuz. I remember even in the strikes in June, after the strikes in June, I should say, they struck Al-Udeid, and we never responded to that. As a matter of fact, Trump even said he knew that strike was coming and he allowed it. Do you agree with that?
Ultimately, the president's been clear about his objectives, and if Iran thinks they're going to outdeal the best deal maker on the planet, they got another thing coming.
But they struck us and we didn't strike back, and you're okay with that? He even said he authorized, he allowed it. He said that, and you're okay with that?
The president has done many bold things for this country to ensure Iran never has a nuclear weapon.
Okay, well, allowing another country to attack us, isn't that treason?
Allowing Iran to get a nuclear
Gentleman's
weapon.
time's
Obama was
expired.
willing
Chair
to
now
do,
recognizes the gentleman
that's what
from
you want.
Arizona, Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, as you know, I represent San Diego, the largest military community in the country. Right now, as we are speaking, 2,500 San Diego Marines are off the coast of Iran. Many, many other San Diegans in uniform have gotten 48-hour deployment notices. So this war in Iran is not theoretical for me or for my constituents. It's deeply personal. As you also know, on Easter Sunday, President Trump threatened to destroy Iran's bridges and power plants, writing, quote, "Open the fucking strait, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch." And 2 days later, President Trump wrote, quote, "A whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will." My office's phones have been ringing off the hook. I've heard from so many military families concerned about the president's mental fitness and whether he's fit to serve as our commander-in-chief, given that he's sending their loved ones into harm's way. Our troops, who have shown incredible bravery and tactical proficiency, deserve to know that their leaders are focused and stable. So, Mr. Secretary, you are with the president a lot, and it pains me to even have to ask this about our president, but my constituents' lives are at stake. Do you believe that the president is mentally stable enough to be the commander-in-chief?
Did you ask the same question of Joe Biden for 4 years?
Mr. Secretary, Joe Biden is not the president. Mr. Trump has been president for a year and a half, and I'm asking you
did
right
not,
now.
and I won't even engage with the level of disparagement that you're putting on the commander-in-chief, who indeed is. Meeting
Mr.
him
Secretary,
every single day.
Mr. Secretary, Biden is not the president.
He's the sharpest, most insightful commander-in-chief we've had in generations. And you want to compare, you want to ask that question after you and your fellow Democrats defended Joe Biden, who could barely speak and didn't know what day of the week it was?
As you know,
he governed through an auto pen.
When
he had a Secretary of Defense who went AWOL for a week. I can't be gone for 10 days, for 10 minutes.
I will reclaim my time.
Gentlelady's time. She's reclaimed it.
So, as Mr. Jimenez said, we should be taking leaders at their word. So is there a reason that we should not be taking our leader at his word?
Iran should not underestimate the will of President Trump and the United States military to achieve our mission.
Okay, well, I want you to know this is not a partisan thing. In fact, many Democrats have had, many Republicans have had these same questions. Marjorie Taylor Greene said he's out of control and he's gone insane. Candace Owens said the 25th Amendment needs to be invoked. Megyn Kelly, Tucker Carlson, who you used to work with, Alex Jones, Stephanie Grisham, the list could go on. So how do I explain to my constituents that while they are in harm's way, their commander-in-chief is posting these unhinged posts?
How did you explain to your constituents what happened on October 7th, or what happened in Afghanistan, or what happened with the debacle and the withdrawal in Afghanistan, where the troops were left? How did you explain that with Joe Biden's leadership?
Mr. Secretary,
how did you explain that to the Marines that didn't get medals, that we restored their medals because of that disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan? Did you explain that to your constituents when Joe Biden was asleep at the wheel and he had an AWOL Secretary of Defense?
How about this next post? How can I explain this next post to my constituents? I'm Jewish, so this doesn't really bother me, but my understanding is that this is quite offensive to many Christians. So how do you explain this post?
I'm not here to explain posts. We have an incredible commander-in-chief
Okay,
who
Mr.
puts our troops
Secretary.
first. I'm here for a budget hearing about our troops.
This is
It's a historic budget that's giving
our
us a
troops.
chance to defeat
Mr. Secretary,
our adversaries,
Mr.
and President
Secretary,
Trump is
please,
doing that
this
in
is my time.
world-class fashion.
This is
Gentlelady
about our
has reclaimed her
troops.
time, Mr. Secretary.
This is about our troops. This is about who is commanding our troops and if our troops can trust that they are being sent into harm's way under good strategy. The mental stability of our commander-in-chief is deeply important to our troops. It's deeply important to this country. It
wasn't
our
important to you
troops'
during Joe
lives at
Biden.
stake. I'll remind you that when there were concerns, Democrats came together, and he was not our nominee for president. So I encourage you to have the same courage that Democrats had. Mr. Secretary, you keep saying that he is the best commander-in-chief we've ever had, the best negotiator.
Talk to the troops.
13 American troops have died. More than 380 have been wounded. The Strait of Hormuz, which was wide open, is now closed. Less than 90% of traffic through the strait is still not going despite the ceasefire. The Iranian regime is still in power. It still has nuclear material. The war is costing Americans billions of dollars. And Mr. Secretary, if you think that this is what winning looks like, then maybe we should be questioning your mental stability. Maybe you are the one responsible for this failure, and the president should think about replacing you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields
for the
back.
wrong
Chair, I
side, which is
recognize
not
the gentlelady
surprising.
from Virginia, Ms. Kiggins. Gentleman from New York, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Head wounds, heavy bleeding, and then just shrapnel all over. So folks are bleeding from their abdomen, bleeding from arms, bleeding from legs. Secretary Hegseth, do you know who said that?
I'm not sure I do.
It was one of our soldiers describing the devastating Iranian drone strike at Port Shuaibah, March 1st in Kuwait. As you know, 6 of our soldiers killed, over 30 wounded. Secretary, do you know the range of the Shahed 136 one-way attack drone, approximately?
It depends on the variant, but it's got serious distance.
Several hundred miles. Do you know how far Port Shuaibah is from Iran?
There's a reason why we took extreme measures
I'm gonna
of
reclaim
force
my time.
protection, because
I'm
we
gonna
understood
reclaim
the
my time.
proximity challenges.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to reclaim my time. It's well under 100 miles. Before the war started, there was clear intelligence that Shuaibah was high on Iran's target list. Internal analysis had said the site was indefensible from aerial attack and should not be used. Yet you sent our soldiers from the 103rd Sustainment Command there anyway. Is that true or false? True or false? Straightforward question.
Are you going to give me a chance to answer, or just play gotcha?
Did you send them there or not?
We took proactive
I'll
measures
take that
from the
as a yes
beginning to
and
ensure
reclaim my
force
time.
protection and defensive
Now,
posture were
let's talk,
maximized
Mr.
across
Secretary,
the theater.
Let's talk about what defenses they had. Prior to the attack, officers on the ground knew our troops were vulnerable. In fact, they requested additional force protection. Did they receive it?
Wherever humanly possible, force protection and
not.
counter
I'll
UAS
save you
was
the
always
time.
made available.
They did not. In fact, when asked to describe the base's defense, one survivor who's come forward from the unit said, quote, I would put it in the none category. From a drone defense capability, none. So let's be clear, no counter-drone capabilities, no counter-rocket systems, no counter-mortar or counter-artillery, not even the basic overhead protection that you and I had 20 years ago in Iraq, and now 6 of our soldiers are dead. The next day, you downplayed the attack. You said it was a squirter that squeaked through fortified defenses. But since then, thankfully, brave survivors have come forward to set the record straight. One of our surviving soldiers told CBS, quote, painting a picture that one squeaked through is a falsehood. Another said the unit was, quote, unprepared to provide any defense for itself. It was not a fortified position. Another survivor said the building's protection was about as weak as one gets. Secretary Hegseth, that is obviously in direct contradiction to what you said from the Pentagon podium the next day. So are you saying that these soldiers, our soldiers, who survived this horrific attack are lying?
What I'm saying is before the commencement of the conflict, we put in maximum defensive posture we could.
That's a direct
We moved
contradiction to
70
what they said.
in this
Mr.
in this directing. Can I speak, or are you just going to monologue falsehoods all over the place?
It's not a falsehood.
We moved
Excuse me.
7,500 troops off of the
Reclaiming my
X based
time.
on the intel.
Stop.
Based on the intel.
Stop. Reclaiming my time.
Because you yell doesn't
Are
make you right.
calling-
Just because you yell doesn't
I'm
make you right.
reclaiming my time on behalf of these survivors. You just said what they said is a falsehood.
There's a much larger
that true?
picture. There's a much larger picture at play here that included integrated air defenses, bunkers, moving people off
Then
the
why,
X
Mr.
to
Secretary,
ensure
are
that they
they
were not
dead?
part of the target. We moved those troops and all across the theater, thousands of troops off the X, off of their bases, because we knew what Iran was going to try to strike, and we knew there
So
could
no
be a
answer.
tragic moment.
No
there could be a
answer, Mr.
tragic moment where
Secretary.
something
Again.
could get through. Of
Again,
course, that's the
I'm
consequence of
reclaiming my
conflict,
time.
and we
Again.
remember those 6 every single day.
I wanna
But
finish-
don't play games with.
I'm not playing games.
raising
I
your
want to
voice and
finish with
pointing
one more
fingers.
quote from a survivor of the attack, and I put this on the record. Telling the truth is important, and we're not going to learn from these mistakes if we pretend these mistakes didn't happen. Secretary Hegseth, those soldiers told the truth. Those soldiers are braver than you are.
I commend
They
those
are asking for accountability. They deserve accountability, and I'm asking for the same, starting with you. And as I said a year ago, you need to resign immediately.
I commend those
And I
soldiers.
yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman. Thank you, Secretary Hegseth, General Kane, Mr. Hurst, for being here today. You know, after I was honorably discharged from the Army Reserve, the GI Bill helped me go to school and ultimately become a lawyer. My focus was representing clients who were wrongfully terminated or faced discrimination and harassment at the work. Mr. Secretary, if I were in the courtroom trying to prove that you discriminate against our military heroes, I wouldn't have to look very far or very hard. In just 16 months, you have fired more than a dozen senior military leaders. You've delayed or canceled the promotion of even more. Your chief of staff told the Secretary of the Army that President Trump would not want to stand.
That's not true. That was totally false reporting.
I'm not getting
You
to my
know it.
question yet, Mr. Secretary. Yeah, you told the president, the Secretary of the Army that the president would not want to stand next to a black female officer at the military events. But, you know, despite all of this, I remain very hopeful that you can and will do better for the men and women who have dedicated their lives to protect our great country. You're here to ask for $1.5 trillion. That's a huge budget, and I want to make sure that you have the ability to manage it. Secretary Hegseth, you would agree with me when I say that we want the most qualified people in every position of our military, correct? That's a question.
Yes.
Thank you. General Kane, you would want the same?
Yes.
Thank you. You know, I share the bipartisan concern about the firing of General George. And what I and the American people want to know from you is, did you ask the president for his permission before you fired General George, Secretary Hegseth?
It is my responsibility to confer with the Commander-in-Chief on especially high-level personnel matters. And ultimately, I won't relay what was discussed, but he was aware of the action that would be taken.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And when you made the decision to fire General George, did you consult Secretary Driscoll?
There had been multiple consultations over a year, yes.
Do you and Secretary Driscoll have a good working relationship?
Yes, I appreciate the work he's doing for the Army.
And for the record, would you agree that Secretary Driscoll is doing a great job as the Secretary of the Army?
I appreciate the work that the Secretary is doing and made the personnel change based on the Chief of the Army.
In fact, he was so good that at his job that the president sent him to Ukraine to negotiate a peace deal. Do you know why the president chose to send him over you?
I'm grateful that the president puts in players at key moments to advance policy priorities, and that's what occurred there, and I was very supportive of it at the time.
Recently, Secretary Driscoll testified in front of the Appropriations Committee that he refused to strike the names of 2 female and 2 black officers from a promotion list due to their exemplary service, names which were ultimately removed. Did you order him to strike those names?
I know we removed those names. I did.
Okay. Why?
Because we review every general officer. You mentioned 12 general had been reviewed. The number's much higher than that. I would also note that under Barack Obama, 197 general officers were removed. So this is not something specific to this administration. Every officer serves at the pleasure of the president. And when they need to be removed in order to ensure we have the right leadership in those services, I will make those calls regardless of what you might say from the dais.
You know, about a year ago, the Army began their transformation initiative. I'm all for modernization, but this process seems to have been completely rushed in a way that compromises our readiness, including deactivating a medical evacuation Black Hawk unit at Joint Training Forces Base, Los Alamitos. I've heard recently from senior Army officials who support slowing down the Army Transformation Initiative, specifically as it relates to aviation. Secretary Hegseth, can you commit to slowing down ATI as it relates to aviation?
There are multiple places inside ATI that we are reviewing to ensure that we do not create capability gaps inside today's Army based on the fights we have today and the fights of the future. And this budget reflects ensuring that we don't have any operational gaps in the Army or any of the services.
Mr. Secretary, during your opening, you brought up this beautiful slide, and you talked about the Arsenal of Freedom. It's the Arsenal of Freedom slide, talking about private investment, you know, from the $1.5 billion. RTX was on there, Boeing, GE, L3 Harris, Lockheed. My question to you is, do you or your wife have any personal investment in those companies?
No.
Thank you.
Chair, and I recognize the gentlelady from New Hampshire, Ms. Goodlander.
I want to thank our witnesses for being here today, and I want to begin by getting right to it, since my time is limited, on this $1.5 trillion budget request. Mr. Hegseth, you testified last year and you testified again today that you will be accountable for every American taxpayer dollar that comes to the department, where it goes and why. That's really important since, as it's been pointed out, the department has failed 8 audits. The department remains on GAO's high-risk list. The Inspector General just last year alone identified billions of dollars that could have been put to better use, and in questioned costs, that is spending that raised red flags. So this is a crisis right now in accountability of where the dollars of the American taxpayers who are in the middle of a cost crisis, where this money is going. I want to ask about your war in Iran. And Mr. Hurst, you testified earlier today that $25 billion has been spent to date. I just want to clarify that that is money, that taxpayer dollars that have been spent already in this war.
$25 reflects the costs of the war, right? So we've already spent the dollars on munitions and things like that. So we're factoring in cost of munitions expended into that total.
So how much of that has gone towards munitions? Does that include the munitions that have been spent to date?
Yeah, that reflects the munitions that have been spent to date and other operational costs.
Can you give us a breakdown of what those costs are?
We'll work to get you guys a product that has a detailed breakdown of those costs.
Yeah, my concern here is, Mr. Hegseth, you've testified repeatedly that you're going to be accountable for each and every American taxpayer dollar that you spend, that you're going to be accountable for the rationale. Here we are 60 days in to your war of choice in Iran, and you can't give us an answer on a breakdown of the basic breakdown of American taxpayer dollars that have been spent in your war of choice? That's a question for Mr. Hurst. Right now, as you sit here now, you
We're
cannot.
happy to give you a breakdown. We'll provide you a product after this hearing.
Well, I would love for you to give us this breakdown now and explain to us, was this unbudgeted costs, or was this something the department planned for in advance, since you were appropriated $1 trillion last year?
The department deals with contingency operations all the time within its normal budget.
So this was not budgeted for. My point here is, you know, and General Kane, you've testified to this. We all understand, for you to do your jobs, you need Congress to pass budgets. For us to do our jobs, we need you to give us the details and to be accountable to American taxpayers. And so I got to say, it's an extraordinary dereliction that as you sit here, you cannot account for billions of dollars that have already been spent
You're
in this
briefed
war.
on munitions every week. You and your entire staff have every,
asking
just so the
you-
American public know, it's not
Mr.
as if you
Hegseth,
don't have munitions levels.
Mr.
You do
Hegseth,
from us every single week, so you know
Hegseth,
exactly the numbers you're
Mr.
talking
Hegseth,
about.
you have testified that American taxpayers need to know where their dollars are going. And as you sit here today, you can't provide us with a basic answer to the most simple question that you should be able to answer to each and every American
You're
taxpayer.
asking a question to an answer with an answer you already have.
No, I'm asking you for a breakdown where you said you will be accountable for every taxpayer dollar. You cannot tell us where any of the $25 billion in taxpayer funds that have gone to fund your war of choice in Iran. And I look forward to getting details from our witnesses after this hearing, because the American taxpayers need to know. Mr. Hegseth, can I ask you, do you know what the average cost of a gallon of gas was in this country on February 28th?
Well, it depends on where you live. If you live in California, it's $8.
$2.83. Do you know what the average cost of a gallon of gas is today?
Much higher in California.
$4.23. I gotta say, Mr. Hegseth, you said you've got a crack economic team that's looking at the impacts of this war on the American taxpayer, and you can't answer this basic question. That should shock the conscience of every American. General Kane, I want to come back to something, a really important principle, and my time is limited. You testified to an important and bedrock principle of American law, that our service members follow lawful orders and lawful orders only. Is that right? Do you agree with the statement, quote, "The military won't follow unlawful orders"?
I do.
Mr. Hegseth, do you agree with that statement?
I do, but understand what you're insinuating in a partisan point.
I'm not. I'm actually quoting you directly, Mr. Hegseth, from April 12th, 2016. And I appreciate that on the record, you've clarified this important principle of American
Gentlelady's
law.
time's expired. Chair, and I recommend from New Jersey, Mr. Norcross.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank witnesses for being here today. Mr. Secretary, it's well known that our defense industrial base and maritime industrial base has declined greatly over time. It's the shipyards, it's many of the things that you already spoke about. In my community, we used to have 3 shipyards, 40,000 workers. We've lost that critical job skills there and 40,000 people who know how to do it. And quite frankly, most of it went overseas because it was cheaper. Well, cheaper doesn't buy the security we need for our industrial base. I championed a provision in the 24 NDAA entitled Enhanced Domestic Content Requirement for Major Acquisition Programs. Had to do with our industrial base making things here in America long before this administration came in. The goal was to strengthen our supply chains and have that critical oversight, push for greater investments, much of what you're doing now on these major defense acquisition programs. So we passed that in a bipartisan manner because we knew that this was critical and things can happen. Lo and behold, here we are. There was a reporting requirement in that. That calls on you, the Secretary of Defense, to establish an information repository, issue rules, create a fallback process to govern the Department of Defense. We wanted to better understand much of what is being done here, but it's not being reported back to us. I sent to your office on January 8th, followed up on February 4th. We're years overdue on this report. That will give us insight onto how we're addressing it. We hear what you're saying, but can you commit that we will get that report to us in the next 30 days?
Unless Jay has additional details, I'll make sure we look into it. Whatever we can get to you as rapidly as possibly, we will. We'll also check with the new Navy leadership and make sure they're complying as rapidly as possible with every aspect that could apply to shipbuilding. That's been our focus on the Navy side.
It's not just shipbuilding, major acquisition programs across the board. This is incredibly important, and they are ignoring this, and 30 days is being generous, certainly. Second issue is you talk about championing the American worker and how important this is, yet in a memo on April 9th, you terminate all the collective bargaining agreements across the DOD, taking away from hundreds of thousands of workers at DOD their collective bargaining rights that they voted for. There was nothing to indicate there were any issues with any of the bargaining agreements, yet you decided to take away from them. Over the last few years, we have increased the wages for those war fighters, incredibly important. This year, up to 7%. Yet on the other side of this, you talk about supercharging the defense industrial base. We are in this. How do you go and say, yes, we support the war fighters? They can't do their job unless we are building things that they can use. Yet, no evidence to prove that these collective bargaining agreements were a problem anywhere across the Department of Defense under Democrat and Republican administrations. How do you kind of square that circle that you care about this, yet you take away their voice in the job?
Well, certainly, sir, the great workers that whether they're contractors or DoD civilians that do the important work for us, the great ones are going to stay. And we've invested more in merit bonuses for civilians than any administration previous. So if you're doing great work, you're going to stay and you're going to have even more opportunities. But with our ear to the ground in those shipyards and other factory floors, there were issues with collective bargaining, which led to restrictions to the workforce and our ability to move faster.
If I may, just
and in
point out,
that case,
those are
we made the
outside
decision to provide
contractors.
additional flexibility.
You didn't
that we
take it
can move
away
faster.
from the shipyard workers. You took away from Department of Defense employers where there hasn't been any issues. Let's be clear. Those are independent contractors, and they have their collective bargaining agreements, the ones that work for you.
The ones that work for us should be at will like anybody else based on their performance. And if they're performing well, which I'm sure they are, as you've represented, they will have a job at the Department.
So where is the issue that you took away their collective bargaining rights? Why did you do it if it wasn't a problem?
Well, I stated up front, it has been a problem. There are plenty of cases, whether it's contract or inside our own department, where collective bargaining had led to arrangements and agreements that minimize the efficiency and effectiveness of employees at the point of their impact. That's what we were focusing on, and that's why we made the change, which we very much stand behind.
Well, I yield back.
The gentlelady from Hawaii, Mr. Kuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On February 2nd, President Trump said we should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting, despite the Constitution assigning primary responsibility for elections to the states. Federal law also draws very clear limits. Under 18 U.S. Code Section 592, military officers are prohibited from deploying troops or armed personnel to polling places unless necessary to repel armed enemies of the United States. That is this exception, not politics, not suspicion, not conspiracy theories, armed enemies. Secretary Hegseth, do you think American voters are enemies of the United States? A simple yes and no or suffice.
I think legal voters, I think everybody who's legal should vote, yes.
So American voters are not enemies of the United States? Yes. You're agreeing with me?
I think America's legal citizens should vote, yes.
How many armed enemies of the United States have attempted to interfere in the last election? Can you recall any time when armed enemies of the United States attempted to interfere in the last election or the 2020 election?
We just had the King of England here that a while ago, but
So
they
250
tried to
years
interfere.
ago. Okay, very good. All right. Well, Secretary Hegseth, if President Trump ordered you to deploy troops to polling places during the midterm elections this fall, which would violate the law I just cited, would you implement his order? Yes or no?
What you're trying to insinuate is that the president would give unlawful orders and we would somehow deploy troops as a result. And the evidence of our department is that we've worked alongside law enforcement very effectively for 15 months. Los Angeles would have been on fire for the summer had we not come across
I humbly disagree with that, but this is not a
law
hypothetical
enforcement friends and
situation
help
that
them
I'm
out.
inferring on. Your president in January of this year told the New York Times that he regretted not ordering the National Guard to seize voting machines in key states after the 2020 election. Last I heard from you, the last time we had any kind of armed enemies at any type of voting places was 250 years ago. We're talking 2020. So if the president, again I'm asking you, orders you to break election law, violate the Constitution and the law, would you follow the orders of the president, yes or no?
The president, you like to insinuate that the president issues
It's a
illegal
simple
orders, which he hasn't
question.
and does not.
Who would you follow, the president or the Constitution?
I will note that in 2024, troops were, that was Joe Biden, by the way.
Who
Joe
would
Biden
you send
were deployed to polling locations in 15 states. 2024, Joe Biden, troops deployed to polling locations in 15 states. Explain that one to me.
I am asking you a question now. You seem to really like Joe Biden. You've brought his name up more than many other topics today. Answer the question. Who are you beholden to, Mr. Secretary, the president or the Constitution?
Well, I
If
very
you can't answer
proudly-
that question,
I
'cause you
very
couldn't
proudly
answer
served
that
as
question
president.
when I
and
asked you,
very
would you shoot
proudly swear
innocent
an oath to
civilians
defend
in
the
the leg
Constitution.
in Los Angeles. He couldn't answer that either. So I think our answer is very clear. Obviously, you have taken a oath of loyalty only to the president and not the people of this country. Let's move on now, and let's talk about AI. The Marvin Smart System, which appears to be the program on record being used in Iran, does the targeting work. We know of about 2,000
It's
people
called the
use it to
Maven
do it.
system, not the
Maven,
Marvin system.
Excuse me. Thank you so much for that correction. It does it in a fraction of the time. The intention was to compress the kill chain, and the result was an attack that killed almost 200 children. Would you agree that tragic actions like this prove that when we trade time and humans for safety, people die?
The Maven system is a very effective tool, and inside that we have very prescriptive processes by which we ensure as much precision as humanly possible in very complex battlefield
So you
environments.
think we took every absolute effort to make sure that innocent civilians did not die in this attack?
I know that there is no country on planet Earth that takes more measures to ensure that civilian harm or civilian casualties are minimized than the United States of America and this War Department, and that is a fact. In human
Okay, and yet, Mr. Secretary, you eliminated the department's civilian harm reduction staff. You eliminated, for a country that makes great efforts to make sure human casualties are reduced or eliminated. Don't you think that that goes actually counter to what you just said? Would these children not still be alive if you had not eliminated all of these staff working within CENTCOM?
We didn't eliminate them. We made sure that those things that they normally accomplish are at the field level, which they are, and all of these processes are in place
Would you
at
not
every
agree
level.
that something clearly
every
has
single
failed,
level.
whether it's our implementation of AI, whether it's understanding our human dependence on AI? Would you not agree something failed because almost 200 children died in Iran as a result of our bombing?
You're insinuating something where an investigation is not complete.
Gentlelady's
Thank you, Mr.
time's
Chair. I
expired.
yield
Chair now
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. Really do appreciate your time to be with us. Before I begin some of my questions, I do want to start with something personal, and both to you, Secretary Hegseth, and to the chairman. I want to thank you both for the time that you take to recognize our fallen and those that have given, of course, during this administration, given their all. You have traveled to Dover and have been there to greet those families and to welcome home the fallen. I've been there with you, and Iowa has been hit in particular very hard. We lost 2 of our Iowa National Guardsmen from the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, 34th Infantry Division. Secretary Hegseth, you know full well the 34th. But we also lost 6 members from the 103rd Sustainment Command Expeditionary based out of Des Moines, Iowa during this current conflict. And again, your presence there meant a lot to the families. It also meant a lot to me. So thank you very much for taking the time to do that. Secretary Hegseth, you and I have had many discussions over the course of many months now regarding general officer positions. And, you know, I believe that we were operating in good faith as we talked through a couple of those in particular, 2 Iowans, General Mingus and General Randy George. I was disappointed to see that their retirements were hastened over what I believed had been set out by you and the administration. So I just want to take the time to list out some of General Randy George's accomplishments as Army Chief of Staff. He pulled the Army out of its worst recruiting crisis since the Vietnam era, exceeding fiscal year 2024 recruiting goals and welcoming more than 61,000 new soldiers. Recruitment numbers that both you and the president talk a lot about, and rightfully so. He cut 5% of general officer positions, 12 positions that were deemed as non-essential in the Army, and he reduced the Army headquarters by 1,000 personnel. He co-authored the Army Transformation Initiative, which is a comprehensive response aligned with your directives, and he testified here in front of Congress and took a lot of heat defending that Army transformation. He was suddenly let go at the beginning of April 2026. General George's merits, which I firmly believe in, he enlisted at the age of 17. He is a West Point graduate. He had 4 combat deployments. He served in Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan. He had 38 years of honorable service. He achieved the greatest Army recruitment and modernization effort in a generation. So I want to thank him for his service. And I would like to enter into the record, Mr. Chair, the speeches that I did honoring General Randy A. George on his retirement and General James J. Mingus on his retirement as well.
Without objection, they'll be admitted.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk a little bit about the audit, Mr. Secretary. I saw the video that you posted this week calling on the department to pass a clean audit, and thank you for doing that. It's something that we talked about during your confirmation hearing. Fiscal responsibility at the department has been a priority of mine for a very long time, and I think it's time that we build on that momentum. It's extremely important. And that's why I'm pushing for my Receipts Act in this year's NDAA. It's focused on improving financial traceability and accountability across the department. And if you could talk a little bit more about the efforts in making sure that we are being much more accountable to our taxpayers. What is that effort going to entail? When will we see a clean audit?
As I said, Senator, thank you for your work on the audit. That has been a priority of our department from day one. And we put in place goals and benchmarks to get to FY28, get to 28 for a clean audit. The Joint Task Force audit, which we announced, was a reflection of even more capabilities we want to push forward and centralize authority to make sure it happens. Jay's been involved from the beginning. We also have a new IG. Who the new IG's focus, one of his focus points is precisely this, and he's prepared to work with us to ensure we reach it. So I think at every level and through this budget, it's a focus.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to seeing a clean audit. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. Senator Hirono.
Recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Hegseth, I want to tell you something right now. You focused our military once again, and finally, and you've shaped it into the meritocracy, and you've dramatically increased the United States' ability to protect power, and when needed, lethality. And I mean, and as a result, our deterrents have never been more evident the world over. So thank you. General Kane, you mentioned in your opening remarks George Marshall. Unfortunately, some of your immediate predecessors were clearly one type of a general. They were Democratic generals. One of them, even in this committee, used politically charged rhetoric of the left. And I don't want Democratic generals. And for that matter, I don't want Republican generals either. I want American generals. You, sir, are an American general. You know exactly what we need generals, a Joint Chief of Staff that knows, understands, respects, and embodies your role to serve this republic, the troops, and the mission. And that is precisely what you're doing. And I want to thank you because you do remind me of George C. Marshall. He was a great American, and so are you. Secretary Hegseth, what do you know of any nation state that ever enriched uranium to 60% that then didn't make a nuclear weapon?
Well, first of all, I want to second your comments about the chairman, and I agree. I appreciate how he does his job. Usually when a country pursues at that level, it's pursuing a nuclear weapon.
100% of the countries that have reached 60% enrichment have then produced a nuclear weapon. And is it true that Iran was in the process of building such a swarm of UAVs and ballistic missile shield conventionally, once they wanted to bake the cake because they had all the ingredients to make the nuclear weapon, it would have been damn near impossible for us or anyone else to prevent them?
As I pointed to, the president was wise enough to understand that at its weakest moment, following the 12-day war and Midnight Hammer, now is the time to degrade their conventional capabilities, the umbrella they were building of missiles, long-range, short-range, cruise missiles, one-way attack drones, that they were going to use to blackmail the countries around them to not do anything about their nuclear program when they broke out from 60%. We know that to be knew that to be their intention, and something had to be done about it, and President Trump had the courage to do it.
Well, President Trump, there's been a lot of quotes that people have been mentioning his words, and I wanted to mention some that I thought were interesting. Here's a quote: "I will take no options off the table to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon," Barack Obama. "Iran will never get a nuclear weapon," Joe Biden. I will never hesitate to take whatever action necessary, and I will never allow Iran to acquire nuclear weapons. All options are on the table. Kamala Harris. And this one, we would totally obliterate Iran. That's a terrible thing to say, but those people who run Iran need to understand that. Hillary Clinton, 2008. So it seems to me that Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Donald Trump had something in common. They weren't going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon, and some of them, 4 of them, were all words, and one of them took action. There's 93 million. We're involved in a land war in Asia. I get it. It's complicated. 93 million people, much larger than Iraq, but 80% of their country hates their guts. This is a regime that murdered 40,000 of them and gunned them down in the streets. They're responsible for over 600 American deaths. How long was World War II? You have any idea? In days? I have it right here. In days exactly.
I got it multiplied by 365, but
yeah, it's 1,347 days. Korea was 1,129, and our involvement in World War I, which was rather quick, was 585. How long we've been involved in Iran?
just shy of 60 days.
60 days, 2 months. And what is the degradation of their Navy right now, Secretary?
Their conventional Navy is destroyed. They had 3 drone aircraft carriers, they have none. They had 11 submarines, they had none. They had different frigate classes, they have none. They may have small speedboats at this point, Coast Guard type vessels, but their conventional Navy is gone.
Air Force?
Likewise, functionally destroyed.
Command and control?
It's hard for them. There's a reason why there's a challenge in communicating around a deal is because their command and control is fundamentally broken as far as who's in control and how they communicate.
We could make very good arguments that the serious nature of any action in a country like Iran, there were good things to consider before doing it. There were also very good reasons to do it. The fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, Republicans and Democrats, we're here now. This is an evil regime. We can fundamentally reshape not only the region, but the world. They were the largest exporter of terror and ballistic missile technologies. We need, gentlemen, to win. Secretary, General Kane, win. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers and Member Smith, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. This committee is being asked to consider a $1.5 trillion DoD budget request that funds not only weapons and system programs, but the people, leadership, readiness, and trust required to make them effective. When senior leaders are removed abruptly or merit-based promotions are disrupted without clear explanation, Congress does have the responsibility to understand the rationale and operational consequences. So I'm going to focus on Secretary Hegseth. And to start, no one is disputing that senior officers serve at the pleasure of civilian leadership. The issue in front of this is whether the decision to remove General Randy George strengthened the Army or created an avoidable disruption during an active operational period. General George, who also served as commanding general at 1st Corps at JBLM, has been serving for 4 decades, including multiple command and operational leadership roles, culminating as Chief of Staff of the Army, responsible for readiness, force modernization, and the welfare of over 1 million soldiers and civilians. He was removed in the middle of an active conflict involving U.S. operations against Iran when leadership continuity is most critical. Public reporting indicates that General George's removal may have followed disagreements over Army personnel matters, including concerns regarding withheld promotions. So my question, Secretary, is this: what specific national security risk, mission risk, or leadership concern did General George present that justified removing him in the middle of a conflict, or was he removed because he challenged some decisions being made?
As I stated earlier, out of respect to these officers, I don't discuss the nature of the removal, but I would ask an earnest question of you: where does General George fall in the operational chain of command?
So I'm asking you, why did you fire him?
No, but
don't change
you
the
talked
subject,
about
sir.
you talked about an
Please
operational
answer my
moment.
question.
Where does General
Please
George
answer
fall
my question.
in the No, it's a simple
National
question.
risk,
You're on the House Armed
mission
Services
risk,
Committee.
Leadership concern. What did he present that justified removing him in the middle of a conflict?
Do you know where General George serves in the operational chain of command?
So I'm asking you my question one more time, sir. Don't try to flip it on me. Why was he removed? Was he a national security risk, mission risk, or leadership concern?
We don't.
Yes or no?
We don't talk about the nature of removals,
don't answer
but
the question.
you also won't answer where he is in the operational chain of command because he isn't in it. He isn't in the operational chain.
Lady reclaimed your time.
You want to tie it to the war, but you don't
Sir,
even know where he is in the chain of command.
Some
It's
respect,
the
okay?
gentlelady from Washington's time.
Under DOTI 1320.04, the Secretary of Defense may withhold or disapprove forwarding nomination after service recommendations in limited circumstances, including newly identified adverse information, pending investigations, reportable information, and questions regarding mental, physical, moral, or professional qualification, incomplete or non-compliant nomination packages, missing certifications, or the need for additional clarification from the military department. Several colonels reportedly selected for brigadier general were removed or withheld after board selection and service certification. Which of these specific grounds applied to each withheld officer, and what objective evidence supported these decisions?
Congressman, that was just one of many boards across the services where we will perform similar reviews, and I anticipate other officers will be removed also.
Okay, but what were the grounds for those?
Again, we don't talk about, out of respect for those officers, we don't talk about the nature of that, and we all serve at the pleasure of the president. We're solving for an institution that needs to be based on merit and professional execution, and there's been a lot of gender and demographic engineering that's been going on for reasons other than the focus of exactly what we should be doing on the battlefield. So whether it's that or
I did not raise
execution,
gender.
that's implied in every statement that everybody makes. And
I
so
did not
ultimately, as
raise
we
that.
review all these boards, it has nothing to do with anything other than their performance on the battlefield or their performance in their career.
And these people are thoroughly vetted, thoroughly researched, and I guess my question is this about loyalty to Trump, or is it about what's good for the mission?
I understand what you're implying, but it's about the Constitution and our military and its ability to execute, and I'm going to make sure the president has the finest officers across the force prepared to deliver.
So this committee funds weapons, readiness, recruiting, professional development, and leadership pipelines. But no amount of money can compensate for a force that may lose trust in the fairness of advancement. And this is fairness. We believe in merit. We have always had a merit-based system. That's not the argument.
No, we have not. Not under
But
the
as
Biden
we
administration,
consider-
we did not. It became social engineering, not merit, and we're
No,
fixing
no, it
it
didn't.
quick.
No, it did not. No, it did not. And when we consider this budget request, we must ensure that taxpayer dollars are matched by sound judgment, credible leadership, and a personnel system worthy of those who serve. I yield back, Mr. Chair.
Gentlelady yields back. Chair not recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, you recently fired the Army Chief of Staff, General Randy George, who's one of the most distinguished and decorated officers of his generation. General George's nomination came before us. We reviewed it thoroughly, and we concurred. Why did you fire General George?
Well, as I did then, and I'll say now, we thank General George for his service. And out of respect to him and other officers, we never talk about the nature of why certain officers are asked to step down. But we all serve at the pleasure of the president. And ultimately, my view in coming into this department, as I stated in my confirmation hearing, was to change the culture of the department. And it's ultimately challenging to change the department, the culture of a department with the same people who are a part of or in that department. So I have made many changes with general officers. We will continue to make changes as necessary with general officers, and they will be in keeping with the trajectory of where we would like to take the department. But it doesn't take away from the service of those, and I think you will note that every officer that's been asked to leave has been treated with respect.
Interesting. Of the 24 officers that you have fired for reasons unrelated to performance, since you have not indicated any cause, 60% are black or females. Now, did the president direct you to single out female and black officers to be dismissed?
Senator, of course not. And as we've emphasized at this department from the beginning, the only metric is merit. Members on this committee and the previous leadership of this department were focused on social engineering, race and gender in ways that we think were unhealthy for the department, focusing on those things, making decisions based on those things.
Okay.
In President Trump's War Department, we make decisions based on only one thing, merit. And that's how we've made decisions going forward. That's how we've made them, and that's how we'll make them going forward.
Well, let me go back to General George. What did he fail in terms of his lack of merit to continue serving?
as I've said, I don't talk about the nature of dismissal
No,
out of
you
respect
use
for
that
these
as an
officers.
excuse, and then
But
you
ultimately,
don't
we
talk
want to take the department in a particular direction, certain services in a particular direction, and we want leadership that's running as fast in that direction as possible. And in some cases, we make changes accordingly, but do so out of respect to those officers.
Well, I think that direction from your behavior is an intense interest in Christianity, in nationalism, and in not recognizing the talents of women and non-white gentlemen, and that's the wrong direction.
I don't know what you're insinuating, Senator, but I am not ashamed of my faith in Jesus Christ. No,
Well,
I'm not.
you shouldn't be
And
ashamed.
if you want to shame me for it, go ahead.
I'm not shaming you, but are you critical of other faiths?
I am a believer. I'm quite open in that, and our department allows for a multitude of faiths. So I don't know what you're suggesting. I've heard the likes of things that people like you suggest to try to smear my character, and I won't give into it.
No. I'm sorry, Mr. Secretary, but broadcasting before the national religious broadcasters stressing the need for more Christianity in the military forces doesn't seem like a neutral position in which you tolerate and accept all religions. Let me move on. The strategic aspects of this operation in Iran. The president declared that we're going to destroy their missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. And after more than 13,000 strikes, unclassified assessments conclude that Iran retains more than 40% of its drone arsenal and 60% of its ballistic missile launches compared with pre-war levels. That's one of his objectives. The second objective was regime change. To the great proud people of Iran, I say tonight that the hour of your freedom is at hand, and we will take over your government. Well, when we finish, we'll take over government. That has not succeeded. And then one of his other things is at the onset of the war, the president said, we will ensure that Iran does not obtain a nuclear weapon. Military operations in Iran have not achieved that goal yet. And it also seems to indicate that his pronouncements about Operation Midnight Hammer obliterating the nuclear policy and structure of the Iranians was false. So you have not achieved any of the objectives yet that has the president mentioned.
Well, in this setting, I won't talk about the nature of metrics, which are classified, as you know, Senator. But I can say that looking at the objectives we set out to achieve from the beginning, some of which you laid out, our military objectives have been stunningly effective. Take, for example, their defense industrial base. They're completely incapable at scale at any level of reconstituting the capabilities you referred to, which is a devastating result for any country, especially one whose ambitions are as wide as Iran's. So we've put the president in a very strong position to ensure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. That's the takeaway that's been underneath every single aspect of this. For 47 years, Iran's trying to blackmail its way to a nuclear weapon. They were closer than ever before because of bad deals under previous administration. President Trump was willing to do something about it and not allow their conventional missile shield. That's the North Korea strategy. That's, to be clear, what Iran was pursuing. Hiding their nuclear ambitions, revealing them over time, and then building a conventional shield of missiles so powerful that no country would challenge them for fear of what would happen if they unleashed that arsenal. Weakened after the 12-day war and Midnight Hammer, which did obliterate their sites, President Trump saw an opportunity because their ambitions continued to ensure that umbrella of nuclear blackmail did not allow them to get to a nuclear weapon. And the world is safer because of his bold and historic choice.
Mr. Secretary, I think that's rhetorical but not factual. Thank you.
Cotton. Senator Gillibrand and then Senator Rounds.
Thank you, gentlemen, for appearing before this committee, and thank you for the closed session prior to this. I don't know if you fully appreciate how much the American people do not support this war. It is an unauthorized war. Normally, when you come to Congress, it's a way for the American people to be part of that discussion. The American people, particularly in my state of New York, are upset for a lot of reasons.
First of all, this war is costing so much money. Over $25 billion already, estimates $1 billion a day, and they're feeling it every single day at the gas pump with higher prices for both fuel, for diesel, for gasoline for their cars. They're also feeling it with higher grocery costs, and they're exhausted. They are truly exhausted. On top of that, they have so many grave concerns about how this war is being prosecuted. They read in the paper that 22 schools have been hit. They read in the paper about a girls' school, hundreds getting killed. We have a debate going on in this country about AI, a serious debate about AI. And I haven't heard yet from you that you will not allow AI to make final targeting determinations, even when nuclear weapons are being used. That's a huge issue that we need to discuss. So I want to start from the top, Secretary Hegseth. Why do you continue to prosecute a war that the American people aren't behind?
First of all, I appreciate the opportunity for that closed session where we had a, unsurprisingly, very different discussion than we have here with the cameras on. We support this.
Because my job is to represent New Yorkers, and I can tell you, when I talk to them all across my state, they are furious, and they expect me to explain to them why they are furious.
And Senator, when I talk to Americans, and especially when I talk to the troops, they are grateful for a president who has the courage to take on this threat after 47 years of what Iran has done, targeting and killing Americans, and what it would mean to the world if Iran's nuclear ambitions were actually achieved. So the question I would ask to you and to others is, what is the cost of a nuclear-armed Iran? What is the cost to the American people if the world's most dangerous regime has a nuclear weapon?
But the truth is, they don't want war coming to this shore, and when you do a decapitation operation, the likelihood is going to be exchanged in the United States. There's no evidence that we are safer because of this war. We did not have any evidence that Iran intended to imminently attack this country in any way, shape, or form. So I disagree with your assessment that we are under threat.
Do you not believe them when they say death to America?
Listen, our adversaries use rhetoric all the time. What I'm concerned about is we are not safer, and I would just like to know why you have not sought the support of the American people, and 3 out of 5 Americans are against this war today.
I believe we do have the support of the American people, and we have briefed regularly what this mission looks like and why it's critically important that we undertake it. And I would remind you and this group that we're 2 months in to an effort. And many congressional Democrats, as I pointed out, want to declare defeat 2 months in. Iraq took how many years? Afghanistan took how many years? And they were nebulous missions that people went along with. This is different. This is a defined mission set that we have had great success in pursuing against a determined enemy who seeks nuclear weapons. And I'm proud of the opportunity to remind the American people, because they believe in it as well, that they can't have it.
You don't care whether
When the American people, and the American people are quite smart, they understand and see through spin. They know that a regime that says death to America, that seeks nuclear weapons and the ability to deliver. Did they lie about the range of their missiles?
How much
Because I saw a 4,000-kilometer
How much more will you
missile
ask
get
American
shot
people
at
to pay for this war?
Diego
right
Garcia.
now, do you want it $1 billion a day? Do you want it $2 billion a day? You're asking for $200 billion more to fund this war and to make sure we have
didn't ask for $200 billion. I don't know where you got that number from, Senator. I think you got it from the news, which you should be careful what you read in the news.
Okay, Mr. Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth, here's a few more. Let's talk about how you're prosecuting the war. What is your response to targeting that has resulted in the destruction of schools, hospitals, civilian places? Why did you cut by 90% the division that's supposed to help you, not target civilians? And do you know the impact of a strategic failure at a war when you have so many civilian casualties? You may have tactically completed a mission well, but strategically is not meeting your goals because of the harms to civilians. What is the cost of that?
Let's leave time for an answer.
No military, no country works harder at every echelon to ensure they protect civilian lives than the United States military. And that is an ironclad commitment that we make, no matter what systems
Then
we
why
use.
did you cut the department by 90%?
Thank you, Senator Gillibrand. There'll be other rounds of questions. Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here today. I want to talk about the costs of war. The costs of war include caring for our veterans. We've had an estimate from Mr. Hirsch yesterday that the cost to date in dollars for this war has been $25 billion, which I believe is well below the actual cost based on everything that I've heard, everything available to us in various kinds of settings, and I'm going to ask for a more accurate assessment. But we also know that about 400 service members have been wounded as a result of this war. When they retire, when they come home, their retirement pay will be docked dollar for dollar for every disability benefit dollar they receive. Secretary Hegseth, I'd like your commitment that you will support the Major Richard Starr Act that will eliminate this wounded warrior tax. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Tens of thousands of servicemen and women now are reduced in their retirement pay literally for every dollar of disability benefits they receive.
Well, I appreciate your focus on this issue, and I will tell you of the, you mentioned roughly 400 that have been injured. Thankfully, over 90% are returned to duty. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't have a residual challenge. And we're tracking that at point of injury to ensure that that is noted, even though they're returned to duty.
But what I'd like is your commitment that you will support the Major Richard Starr Act.
As I have said in the past to other organizations, we support the Richard Starr Act.
Thank you. On the issue of cost, Mr. Hurst, does that $25 billion estimate include all of the costs in terms of damage to our bases, the need to replace planes and munitions, and the costs of injuries to our servicemen and women?
Senator, so for the Milcon facilities replacement cost, that's probably the hardest thing to estimate right now because we don't know what our future posture is going to be or the future construction of those bases.
Well, you owe it to us. You're here to ask for appropriations.
Of course.
And I would like a more accurate estimate of what has been done that will require replacement and renovation, as well as the other costs. And I think $25 billion is probably less than half, maybe less than a quarter of the total cost of war, which is the reason why the supplemental request is much higher. So I think you owe it to the American people to give us the straight talk about what the costs have been. Mr. Secretary, I know you have characterized this war as an astonishing military success, to use your words yesterday. But the American people aren't buying it. And I know you feel the American people are seeing through the abstruse stuff that is thrown at them, but one point is irrefutable, which is America never succeeds in war unless the American people are behind it. And if what you're seeing as success now is winning, I would hate to see what losing looks like, because none of the shifting and contradictory objectives of the war so far have been achieved. Likewise, let me ask you, yesterday, the President said that Ukraine has been, quote, militarily defeated. I assume you don't agree with that assessment.
The negative nature in which you characterize the incredible and historic effort in Iran is part of the reason, Senator, why the American people view it the way they do. It's why I looked out at our press corps at the Pentagon and called them the Pharisees in the press. It's because they look for every problem.
Well, I'm asking you about
you look for
Ukraine.
every problem that exists,
Ukraine
and you
has
miss
been militarily defeated.
You miss the
I would
plank.
submit, based on my 9 trips to Ukraine, that is a false narrative that the President's buying
We are 2
from
months
Vladimir
into a
Putin.
historic military success in Iran, and you want to call it a
dispute it
defeat. And it's
because
defeatist Democrats
it
like
is
you
the
that
people
cloud
of
the mind of the
Ukraine
American
who are
people
fighting
and
for their
would otherwise
survival,
fully support
fight no
preventing
help
Iran from having
the
a nuclear weapon.
Administration, and they are bravely fighting our fight. And that is the reason that I'm pursuing the Russian sanctions bill, which is bipartisan, along with Senator Graham, and why I hope we will recognize our obligation to release that $400 million, which we've appropriated.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Ernst.
I'm also concerned about recent reporting on your own financial dealings with regard to profiting from the war in Iran. The Financial Times reported that your broker tried to buy hundreds of shares in a BlackRock fund invested in defense companies just before the war began. The law clearly prohibits the Secretary of
That
Defense.
entire story is false, has been from the
Let me
beginning,
finish
and
my
was made up out of whole cloth. And anybody that looks at it sees how it was worded from the beginning to make it look like I was involved in something I had nothing to do and never have. So any insinuation that I've ever profited, other than serving this nation, what I give, what you give, what others give, I'm not looking for money. I don't do it for money. I don't do it for profit. I don't do it for stocks. And that's part of the reason why I'm able to be effective in this job, because no one owns me. No one owns this department. No one owns this president, and we can execute for the American people, and we do.
The law clearly prohibits the Secretary of Defense from owning stock in the 10 biggest defense contractors. Other senators and I sent you a letter with detailed questions about this, and you have not given us a response. So I'd like to hear you say, did you, through your broker at Morgan Stanley or otherwise, seek to invest in any defense-related funds right before Trump started the Iran war?
I'll give it to you as a big, fat negative.
Then let me ask you a second question. Is your broker getting your personal sign-off on any investment in individual stocks?
Bigger, fatter, negative.
He's not getting your sign-off before he makes investments in defense stocks? Can I refer you to your
I'm not making
ethics
investments,
agreement?
Senator.
I am asking, does he know that he has to get your sign-off before he does that?
Of course.
The
I don't know
time
what
of
you're
the
looking for, but you ain't
senator
going to
has
find
expired.
it.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Slotkin. I think you are next.
Thank you. Gentlemen, you're here to ask for $1.5 trillion, 40% more than what we gave you last year, $1 trillion. And I agree with the chairman of this committee that the world has never been more dangerous and complicated. And regardless of whether we disagree on the reasons for getting into this war, I think we can all agree that we want our military to come out of it safely and successfully and as soon as feasible. The military has taken, the administration has taken military action in 10 different places in the world in 15 months, more than any president in U.S. history. I think President Trump has really become a foreign policy president. And many of those operations, were on the news for a couple of days, but then the American public didn't feel them. And I think the difference with this war with Iran is that the American public is feeling it in their pocketbooks. Gas in Michigan is $4.99 today. The cost of fertilizer, of airline tickets, things that are real to people. Secretary Hegseth, the president said that you were most keen on this war. He said that you were the most gung-ho about it. I think despite us all wanting to come out of this successfully, it is hard to miss that we are at the stalemate, that we don't control the Strait of Hormuz because shipping is not getting through. And we can block what they're trying to get through, but nothing is moving and it's costing the American public. And I think that's a fundamentally different moment than the rest of the military action we've taken. Even in Middle East 101 class, we used to talk about and run war games on the Strait of Hormuz. It's a strategic geography that the Iranians have. And I think it's just concerning to me that we can try and tell the American people that it's going great and we're killing it, but until the Strait of Hormuz is open, I don't think we can credibly say that with any seriousness. I think the question I have for you, though, is future looking, and it's our 2026 elections. The president has been very clear. He said in the State of the Union that essentially if his side doesn't win, then the election was rigged. He said that before the 2020 election. He's asked for voter rolls for 29 different states. He just asked for Detroit's votes or ballots. And And we know that in 2020, he wrote an executive order that he didn't sign that said to the U.S. military, to the Secretary of Defense, you should go and seize ballots and voting machines. A few months ago, he said that he regretted that he didn't sign that executive order. So the U.S. military has never been deployed. You incorrectly said yesterday that they were deployed during different elections. Governors deployed them under their authorities, but the federal government has never put the uniformed military at our polls during World War II, right after 9/11. We've never had to do that. So Secretary Hegseth, if the president, who regrets not signing that executive order to the then SecDef in 2020, asks you to seize ballots or voting machines in states during the 2026 election, will you stand up for the Constitution and say no, or will you salute and do his bidding?
Senator, I didn't get a chance to answer the front part of your question, which, there was a lot of deferred maintenance under the Biden administration that needed to be addressed because the world was in chaos when President Trump was elected because of...
Please.
Well, again, that's
It's the most important thing. It's what's happening.
It's yet another gotcha hypothetical, which is your specialty.
It's not. We had
and
an
ultimately,
executive order
under the Biden administration in
had to
2024...
hold. It's not a hypothetical. I refuse to accept. You give that answer all the time. You and I have done this dance before. Get over it, okay? In 2020, he's the president, your boss, the guy you're performing for right now, told the journalists this year that he wished he signed that executive order to your predecessor. And your predecessor said publicly, thank God, we didn't actually go forward with it. What are you going to do? You're the guy here in the seat. It's not hypothetical. Tell the American people, will you deploy the uniformed military to our polls to collect voter rolls or machines?
Are you accusing me of performing? Because you're performing for cable news right now.
But
just
Mr.
answer the
Secretary,
question.
we have
It's a hypothetical. By the way, in 2024, under the Biden administration, 15 states did deploy
Under
troops to
their
polling
governor's
stations.
authority, when their governors asked for it.
What did Joe Biden say about
That's
that?
fundamentally, I don't think anything, because he needed them for cybersecurity and for COVID. Trump did it too, under Trump. But it was not the federal decision. It was those governors of the states under their authorities, okay? It's never been done in our history. Please stand up for the Constitution. Do not send uniformed military to our polls.
Do you have a response to that portion of the question, Mr. Secretary?
I've never been ordered to do anything illegal, and I won't. That goes without saying.
Thank you for the answer. Senator Duckworth, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Despite his campaign promise of no new wars, President Trump has been obsessed with using the military any chance he gets, from deploying troops to American cities, to propping up Maduro's chosen #2 in Venezuela, to an endless war of boat strikes in the Caribbean Sea, and now in an illegal war with Iran, where hundreds of thousands of our troops are in harm's way every day with no exit strategy in sight. This administration hides bad policy behind the exceptional military operations and the valor of our uniformed personnel. I've long said Iran is a malign actor, but a responsible administration would have managed this short of conflict instead of starting a war of choice. There was no imminent threat to the United States or our troops. The military was not the most effective tool to get Iran to capitulate, as we're already seeing too clearly now. And using force has made Americans in the Middle East less safe while spiking costs for Americans here at home, all to the tune of 14 service members dead, hundreds wounded, billions of taxpayer dollars, and untold costs to our military readiness. This administration claims to be focused on the warfighter, but President Trump told us when he announced a war from his luxury resort that he expected service members to die. Now, sadly, it's clear how unserious Trump is about his role as the commander-in-chief. His war within Iran has already reminded us how important it is to prevent a war, how serious it is to ask the military to wage one under poor strategic direction, how destructive a wide-ranging war can be for Americans, for our service members, and how difficult it is to actually end one once you start it. The incompetence and casual disregard for our service members' professionalism and sacrifice is, in my opinion, a scandal. General Kane, can you tell us the status of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps' Navy, the entity actively closing the strait?
Senator, apologies, I was listening to you. I was just trying to write it down.
No worries.
They're mostly destroyed. CENTCOM continues to watch them.
Not the Iranian Navy.
No,
The IRCG
Yes, ma'am. The smaller, I won't get into any classified materials, but the smaller, fast, and, smaller boats, Boston whaler-sized boats, there's still some out there. Yes, ma'am.
So this administration and the Secretary of Defense has been boasting about sinking the ships of the Iranian Navy, but let's call this what it is. It's misdirection. They want us to focus on the impressive number of large Iranian ships underwater to distract from the fact that they had no plans for the second Navy that Iran owns that has always been a hard problem to address by military force. The IRCG Navy, not the Iranian Navy, has been Iran's tip of the spear at the Straits of Hormuz, seizing vessels and threatening to target U.S. assets. Iran has long invested in this second asymmetrical Navy specifically to develop capabilities that would be difficult for conventional U.S. military forces to target. Iran's advantage was well known to anyone paying attention. I have no doubt that competent planners in the Pentagon raised their concerns about a quagmire in the Strait to leadership. The question is why their leadership did not pay attention to this sound advice. Hubris is not strategy, and in war it costs lives. Even if the Strait reopens, this administration has created a new, less safe world by initiating and then bungling this crisis and teaching Iran that it can charge $1 million a ship to transit the Strait. It will take a long time for the global economy to bounce back to normal trade flows, and Iran has learned, again, that they can charge $1 million per ship, creating a new funding line for their malicious activity against Americans for years to come. And in the Indo-Pacific, I don't doubt that if the worst day comes, our military will step up to challenge and defend Americans and our interests with military force. But will they be asked to lay down their lives unnecessarily just because the White House was unready and incapable of preventing a crisis boiling over into a war in the Indo-Pacific? General Kane, do you agree that the military would benefit from significant intra-agency planning by the Department of Defense on actions short of war that can be taken if a crisis occurs?
Ma'am, I appreciate that question, you highlighting the importance of that. And we have really great relationships now on the joint staff with the interagency. I think our relationship in particular, I'll just pick CIA, I think it's the best it's ever been. We're really working hard to find the best of Title 10 capabilities plus the best of Title 50 to ensure that we deliver really entrepreneurial options for our national policymakers to do what you're talking about, Senator.
All right, but I am concerned because during the recent NDS hearing, I laid out the very real ways that a crisis in just one of the dozens of flashpoints in the Indo-Pacific could be devastating for our service members, Americans, and our American economy. But since then, this administration has only further diminished DOD's ability to prepare for these crises. In fact, as many as 1/3 of the assets in the Middle East are originally meant to be in the Indo-Pacific. This war of choice is draining our military resources. We need leaders who do everything they can to ensure warfighters only fight when they have to, not because of one man's whims and a lack of bravery among the yes men he surrounds himself with. I thank you for your service, General, and I continue to look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Senator Duckworth. Senator Rosen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Reed. Thank you, General, for your service. Before I begin my questions for Secretary Hegseth, I have one brief important question for General Kane. General, as you've acknowledged at your confirmation hearing, service members who served at locations which another U.S. government agency deems contaminated, like the Nevada Test and Training Range, should have the same presumption of radiation exposure as DOE employees who served alongside them. But we also must ensure that DOD provides the VA with the records proving that these individuals served there. So this is a problem that DOD has the power to solve. I know we've discussed this. So General Kane, will you commit to ensuring parity for DOD personnel who served in locations that the U.S. government has already deemed contaminated, identifying those who served in such locations, and providing documentation of that service to the VA so that they can receive the veterans benefits that they have earned?
You bet, ma'am. And I'm, since our last time together on this, we've continued to chip away at removing or figuring out how to get past that one particular blocking in that record so that that data flows normally. And I'm committed to trying to solve that for those leaders and teammates who are out there at that site.
Thank you. We'll look forward to continue to work with you on that. So Secretary Hegseth, I want to talk a little bit about AI. Because, of course, our service members deserve every advantage we can give them. So I just want you to help me understand this. In February, on the eve of Operation Epic Fury, you publicly designated Anthropic as a supply chain risk. However, this week, it's been reported that the White House is now helping agencies get around this decision to access Anthropic's technology. So the administration cannot credibly make both claims simultaneously. So before I ask you about the inconsistency, I just want you to reconfirm what it is you plan to use this technology for. It's been publicly reported that the decision to label Anthropic a national security risk was influenced by your personal and very public contract dispute with Anthropic when the company said that its technology could not be used for fully autonomous weapons targeting or mass surveillance of Americans. So following up on your response to Senator Rounds earlier, can you confirm whether or not there will always be a human in the loop when AI is used for lethal targeting decisions?
Well, first of all, on Anthropic, they would not agree to our terms of service. That would be like Boeing giving us airplanes and telling us who we can shoot at.
This is not.
So
this is not just about Anthropic, though. This is about.
I just want to be clear. And also,
And that's
Anthropic
fine.
is run by an ideological lunatic who
So
shouldn't have
but that's not my
sole
question. My question is AI
decision
writ
making over
large.
what we do.
Writ large.
We follow the law,
Should
Senator.
AI, will you confirm, you said this to Senator Rounds earlier, so I'm just asking for you to
We
recommit.
follow the law, but we don't have to sign a different terms of agreement with,
That's not,
with Anthropic.
this is not the question. This is not about Anthropic. This was just an example. I want you to confirm that whether or not there will always be a human in the loop when AI is used in a kill chain for lethal targeting decisions. Will there always be a human in a loop, or will AI make the decision? You said this to...
We follow the law and humans make decisions.
So you will confirm what you said to Senator Rounds, that a human will always be in the loop when AI is used.
Which is why
that's
that's part of our terms of service anyway.
You know,
It's how we operate.
all I want to say is this. There is a DOD directive, 3000.09, which mandates that autonomous and semi-autonomous weapon systems be designed to allow commanders and operators to exercise appropriate levels of human judgment over use of force. That is in the DOD
That's why we follow the law, Senator.
So the answer is yes, Mr. Secretary.
The answer is we follow the law. Absolutely.
I think this is more important than following the law. I think that people want to know that AI isn't going to make lethal decisions, and it is critically important.
AI is not making lethal decisions.
That's what we want to hear. We're going to follow on that one. I have just a few seconds left, but you keep doubling down on this phrase, Mr. Secretary. You compare journalists, you compare us, you compare so many to Pharisees. Pharisees. It's a problematic and historically weaponized term that casts Jewish communities as hypocritical or morally corrupt. You doubled down again and said it. Words matter. Words matter. What you choose to say, how we choose to say it. How do you justify using this language as Secretary of Defense? Words matter. It's a historically hurtful term. Why do you continue to use it? And what actions are you taking to prevent rhetoric like this from permeating throughout the department that is going to target specific groups or individuals of people based on their religion?
Senator, I feel like it's a pretty accurate term for folks who don't see the plank in their own eye and always want to see what's wrong with an operation as opposed to the historic success of preventing Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. So I stand by it.
You stand by calling people Pharisees. Sir, I cannot stand for that. That is wrong. It is not respectful to people, and I expect anyone who is in leadership in our country to be respectful and use respectful terms and not be an anti-Semite.
Thank you, Senator Rosen.